Today's second guest speaker is Heidi Johson Bixby, and as I stated to you earlier, I've had the pleasure of knowing and working with Heidi since, I believe, 2005. So please welcome Heidi Johson Bixby.
Thank you, Bruce. It's great to be here. Bruce sent me some questions, and I kept it simple, and I'm going to answer the questions he sent me. I think I'm probably outside maybe some of the speakers that have been in this series, and I think his interest in having me speak is just my entrepreneurial spirit and background. So that's a lot of what I'm going to talk about. I own several businesses, but the core of my career and where I'm at today is based on my main business, which is a financial planning firm. I started 25 years ago. Actually graduated from Clark College with my 2-year degree. I didn't have money to go to college, and so I worked full-time and finished my degree at Clark College, and then I continued to work full-time and finished my 4-year degree at Merrillhurst over in Portland, which again is kind of structured for evenings and weekends, and so I did that. But I went into Clark College and got a degree in accounting and finance, which is something I love a lot. I fell into financial planning, though, literally answered an ad and got a job. I didn't know what a mutual fund was 25 years ago. I really did fall into the profession, but I have to say it's been a fabulous profession for me, and it's something I'm going to talk a little bit later in advice, I guess, or thought in hindsight, is I happen to be really fortunate at a young age to find a career that today I am very passionate about and is a really great fit for me. Bruce said, what's your work ethic and what are your days like? And I work 12 to 15 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and then probably 10 to 15 hours a week on the weekend. I work a lot, but my ability to do that has a lot to do with my drive and my passion for what I'm doing. Because I think if I didn't love what I did. I know you can do that for a period of time, but I think you get burned out if you don't really love what you're doing. So my main business is Johson Bixby. It's a financial planning firm here in Vancouver. We grew from me being the first employee in 1991, and there are 17 people in the firm today. So kind of been evolving over time, but that business being the core, one of the things that I would say to you is if you also have a lot of interests, and so like Takara was saying, even with PR, advertising, or marketing, it's like if you have an interest, whether it's in a business or a line that you do, I do encourage you to have something you're really good at, because I always come back to my financial planning and that as my base for me has allowed me to do all the other things that I'm doing, but I have that as my base. So if you're going to be self-employed, do something really well before you branch off and do other things, because you need to build a reputation, you need to build a skill set, you need to run into all the errors and things to bring the value to someone who's going to hire you. You need to have something that is really valuable to offer. If you're not going to go into a corporation that gives you all that experience and you're going to do your own thing like I have done, it's really important for me to have a base that I'm really good at. And then that allows me some flexibility to do some other things. So Bruce asked how much of the businesses depend on the web. What's interesting, as much as I'm computer literate and enjoy programming even, I am really often late to the party when it comes to technology. I'm not in line for the iPhone. And so what was interesting for Johson Bixby is websites came out and the technology aspect came aboard. A website really wasn't how we were reaching clients because we're a referral business. So a website wasn't important to me. And yes, we ultimately did a website, and today we have a fancy website. But I also think that's interesting to look at what kind of businesses, if you're designing websites, what is the business, where are they in that scope, how dependent are they? I would even say today we only have a website to more easily communicate some of the information to prospective clients, a place to house our blog, but it's not where we get referrals. It's not a core to our business. It's not like we have a ton of visitors. So interestingly, for me, the website of my core business is not where I spend a lot of energy or time. So 2 other businesses that I own are retail. And one is a private mailbox and shipping company. And when I bought that and we revamped it and remarketed it and did everything, that actually was interesting to me because, again, on the established business, the website, I didn't care about SEO. I didn't care about any of those fancy terms. But when it came to trying to drive business to a retail store, completely different market. And so, part of it on your side of not just knowing how to design a website, but if you're going to be in business for yourself, is understanding what a business needs and where the owner is and understanding what they need. Because your communication to me as a business who doesn't really depend on a website that you're trying to design versus a business owner on it being really important, your communication to me is going to be very different. And I recognize that as the business owner, but I think where you are, you also need to recognize where is the person that you're speaking to at, because your message is going to be quite different. The other business I more recently purchased is a very established for 30 years women's retail and personal style consulting business. And what's interesting about that is they had, I swear that website was done in the 80s. It had never been updated. But again, having understood the value of a website for a retail store, now I've gone through great lengths to hire a company to do the writing of it, another person to program it, and that website is very valuable to driving the traffic to that company. So I have one company that's my main company, that the website, great website, but it's not priority, to something that it's pretty important just for getting the metrics in it to drive people who are searching for a certain thing, and then another one that will ultimately be developed for online shopping and a whole nother level of website interaction. So all 3 are very different. So a lot of the times I get asked about financial planning, and it's like being a doctor. If you say you're a financial planner, people want to tell you all your financial stuff, or if you're a doctor, they want to tell you about aches and pains. It's interesting, my perspective being in financial planning, owning businesses, and my message to someone who's starting a career, going into business for themselves. And that's kind of the perspective for me talking is, if you want to go into business for yourself, here are some things I think are really important that I either learned the hard way over time that I think are super important to keep in mind. One of the things about starting a business is you need to recognize you don't know, if you haven't done it before, that you need to recognize there's things you're just flat out not going to know. And just as much as you want to have a professional skill set and say to someone, hire me, you're valuing what you've come to learn and know. And I would say the same thing on the financial side. Like, you need to have an attorney, you need to have a tax person, work with a financial planner. Recognize there are things you can't even fathom that you don't know. And working with someone who is skilled in their area of expertise on those things is very valuable in keeping yourself out of trouble. For example, I remember talking to this gal, and she was a hairdresser, and she hadn't even known that we have to pay B&O tax here in the state of Washington. And she got this letter saying, you're doing this business, you need to pay all these back taxes. And another one who was in the state or city of Vancouver, and there's a city business license in addition to a state business license. It's like there's all those things that why would you know that if you haven't done it before? So there's value in paying for, even if it's a one-time fee to go sit down with someone. It's like, what do I need to know? Get me on the right path. Don't assume that, I'll just hang my shingle and do something. There's quite a bit of rules to having a business, and then it even gets more complicated when you start having employees. But I think it's important for you to value professional advice in the various areas, just as much as you are wanting someone to hire you as a professional and for your experience. So I still pretty frequently think about my beginning. Again, didn't have money to go to college. I moved out when I was 18, paid my way from there. I didn't have much for a very long time. And when people think about working with a financial planner or, saving and what in relation to your business, one of the things that I say to folks is, don't get used to having money, like save money and set it aside, and don't get used to having money, because once you start spending the money that you earn, you get used to that new level, and you like, oh, well, I'll save later, or I'll do this after the kids are here, or the house is purchased, or the car is purchased. Like, the easiest thing you can do is not get used to a higher level of a lifestyle until you've built your base and you have those resources, because I think it's one of the things that has allowed me to build a base that allows me the flexibility. I not only, if there isn't, which isn't true in my life today, but at times when there hasn't been enough work, like you were saying, you can get bored. Yeah, there's a recession. No one's hiring website programmers anymore. Like, build your base so that you can stay doing what you love doing, and you can go through the ups and downs, or the client who hasn't paid you. I was talking with an attorney the other day, and they said, yeah, I thought I was going to get my $30,000 payment in February, and I finally got it in November. It's like, you got to prepare for that. And I think one of the easiest things that you can do if you're younger, starting out, and you're not used to having this nice big paycheck, is don't get used to the nice big paycheck. Set money aside and get yourself positioned so that you have flexibility. You have flexibility if you want to change jobs and you aren't going to get a paycheck for a month. You have flexibility if you ultimately do want to start a business and you have all the startup costs that go with it. Having that base and reserve has paid me dividends over a number of years in a number of instances. One of the things that Takara also spoke on was, how do you set your value? How do you set your rates? I think there's certainly market rates, just what are you doing? How much does it cost to program a website or whatever you're doing? I also think it's important that I can reflect back on this and say, so let's say I'm, $350 an hour, and someone needs me to do something. We're talking billable hours. There's a level at which you need to pay attention to your experience and how quickly you can do something, because there's also value wrapped into something. The fact that you've programmed, 1,000 websites makes you more valuable, and just because you can do it in, I don't know what the number would be, 50 hours versus 100 hours, that's valuable because you can deliver it sooner. Just because it took you less time doesn't mean the price should necessarily be less. So I think it's a mix between what's your hourly rate, but then what is the experience or value you're bringing to that equation to say, you're still going to pay me, pick a number again, I don't know what it would be, $5,000 to program a website. Just because you can do it faster at some point in your career doesn't mean you charge less because you took less hours. You have to keep remembering where's your value on the growth path, because having experience of, oh, don't do that because this happens, or this technology changed and I'm using the current technology, or I know this font doesn't work, or these colors don't work, those all bring value to the equation. So you can't just look at your billable hours. You have to look at what's your skill set and what are you bringing to bill to come up with a price And all of those are things that you need to communicate to someone in selling yourself and the value you bring to that. How do you know when a client isn't a good match? I thankfully have not had to fire too many clients, but I have. And I think one of the most valuable lessons I've learned over time is, and my advice would be, is know yourself. I don't work with certain types of clients. It has nothing to do with whether or not they're yelling at you or, whatever you don't like about them. I think it's important that you know who you are and what pace you want to work at, what environment you want to work in, what client you deal well with. So as an example, as a financial planning firm, you can do it 6 ways to Sunday, and none of it's wrong. Everyone does it differently. But for us, at the core, we are planners. And so that has meant is we're really not good with people who want the hot deal. They want the sexy whatever. Hey, what do you got for me today? Like, those people really don't work well with us because that's just not who we are. We're planners. We're like, let's have this conversation over a period of time, or if you're going to buy something big, let's save for it and plan for it. So I think it's important that you know who you are, because that's going to dictate who you want to work with and who becomes a good client. And if you can do that up front and not take someone because they fog up the mirror or pay you, that's kind of an old saying in our profession. It's just because they fog up the mirror, they're a live person to work with you, doesn't mean you should take them. So as much as you think about firing a client on the end, it's super important to do due diligence on the front end, because you need to have the contract that says, what are you going to deliver? What's the timeline? What's the expectation of what they give you that you can meet that timeline? And you want to work with someone who you can communicate that with, you enjoy working with. They might be really tough, but they're at least still going to understand where you're coming from, and you can communicate that. So know yourself, because if you know yourself and you really think about what you enjoy doing and how much you can flex or bend, then you'll be able to attract the type of client that you want to work with. Again, I go back to, I work a lot, but a big part of that is I don't have people calling me, and that feeling. It's like, I don't have those people calling me. So it's like, oh, great. Hey, how are you? They're people I want to talk to, and that gives you more energy. So I do encourage you to think about on the front end just as much as, oh, that didn't go as planned, maybe firing someone, but doing it on the front end is just as important. I think that there are mistakes and misbeliefs that people have about money and investing. And I think probably the biggest one is, I don't have a lot of money, so I don't have anything to work with. And is Craig still here?
I don't know if Craig is still here.
You have, and I don't know if that.
Craig Eversole?
Is Craig here?
No, he's not.
Is that service still here?
Yes.
They're looking for his position.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a position here of someone, hopefully will get filled, that will help you go through a budget, look at your credit. But I don't care if you have nothing. There is still planning to do. And I think that's one of the things that is probably the biggest misperception about money and planning is I have to have something to do something. I'm like, no, you need to have a goal. You don't have to have money. You have to have a goal. And the planning part of it is helping you figure out how to get there and how's the most efficient way to get there and how much of that paycheck do you need to set aside. And while you maybe don't have a ton of income, where are some other tax breaks or tax strategies that you might benefit from, or education credits because you're in school. There is so much planning to be done regardless of the level of money. And so resources like Craig's position or There's many other things available. I encourage you, if you're not someone who looks at your finances, to find people like that who will help and have the discussion so that you can learn more, because there is strategy to be had. And again, I think about back to when I was a starving student at Clark College, and I was fortunate enough to be around people who helped me set the budget and figure that out, and it made all the difference in my ability to pay for college and be where I am today. So at whatever level you are, I encourage you to ask questions. I think the other thing in regard to financial planning or money is I'm actually laughing because this came up for me recently when I won't even go into the story because it's lengthy, but you don't know what you don't know, and Google does not have all the answers. So I think the other thing that's really important is fine, Google or read on the internet about stuff, but there is like this much information, and probably this is the amount that actually applies to you and where you are and who you are. So I encourage you to research and read and get information, but probably the other thing I would caution you on is don't think you know it all when it comes to an area that you don't live and breathe in every day. That's why someone's hiring you to program a website or do a marketing campaign. It's not what we do every day. And money is one of those things where I cannot tell you how many times people have done their taxes on TurboTax and they didn't know about a credit they should get. They didn't know that a law changed and it needed to be done this way. I had a client come in, and she, long-time client, and just oddly had never mentioned that her son lived with her. And I said, "What do you mean your son lives with you?" Well, it happened to be that he had gotten disabled and had stopped working, an adult son, and had not been able to work and had come to live with her. And I'm like, well, you can claim him as a dependent. That saved her $3,000 a year in taxes going forward. I mean, there's just stuff that might not apply to you, but there's just stuff that you would have no reason to know, and that I encourage you to work with someone on those areas that you're not living and breathing in every day. And I think money and finance is one that affects and permeates our lives more than sometimes we would like to recognize. And recognizing that and finding the ways to use it to your advantage and be efficient with it is really valuable. Kind of what I have for you. So happy to answer questions. Bruce, do you have a question?
No, I'm living proof that I used to be a person who used to try to do everything myself when it came to what Heidi said, whether it be finances, stock market, mutual funds, just about anything money related. And
because you're capable.
Because I'm capable, and I had TurboTax, and I thought I knew, certain people, but it was eye-changing, right? Life-changing, when my wife and I, 11 years ago, sat down with Heidi, a financial planner, and we laid out, exactly, a plan, of the things we wanted to do in life. And it wasn't until we laid all that stuff that we were able to, not spend the money that we had in order to live the life to meet the plan. And it was, again, something 11 years ago I would never have thought of doing. And what keeps going through my mind, right, as it relates to the curriculum here at the college being web development, and I see it all the time, whether it be in, not so much in students, but people outside the program who consider themselves web developers or professionals, that they're able to find something on Google, copy and paste it into a website, say, yay, I was able to do it, and then when the whole thing falls apart, when something gets updated or fixed, they have no clue or no core fundamental skills on how to resolve and critically think how to solve and resolve that problem, okay? So that's what I have, okay? So who else?
Yes.
Meredith.
Hi, I'm curious about with your 3 different businesses, and of course your core one where you said you don't really use the web, or
Right.
you're it's more referral. So when you first got your website, what was it? Just something that you, maybe someone in-house or something did super quick, and it evolved over the years, because you said it's pretty cool now, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's cool because it doesn't look like a, stock market ticker and old couple holding hands on the beach, the typical financial planning website. So I am a Lotus Notes user, and I don't know if you know that program, but I actually I had designed the website originally in Notes. And it was important to me, okay, do as I say, not as I do, okay? Because I thought I could program my own website because I knew how to program in Notes, which I did for a period of time until there were all the reasons you don't do that. So about 5 years later, we converted over and we're in WordPress now. So yes, it was still a pretty cool website for the time period. But it was way different to be designed in Notes at the time, and today I outsource all of it, writing, programming, all of it. And I am going to give, are most of you doing website development stuff? Okay, because I have gone through recently 3 websites being designed. I'm going to give you some horror stories and some lessons learned, because this is really relevant. So the first thing I'm going to say is I love giving people opportunities, and I sometimes pay the price for that because they don't know everything. They're really talented, but they've got some things to learn. And again, I'm going to say, if you're going to program and be on your own as a website developer, which I think you can be successful doing that, there's plenty of business out there, but you need to go have a contract written that says, here's what I'm going to do, here's what I need from you to do this, here's the hours I'm going to spend, here's the price, here's the payment schedule. You need to be a business person and have a contract for yourself and make the terms of it really well documented. Now, I have someone who programmed for me, and we didn't do that. We did it on a handshake, all is good. But it's like, I want you to learn that this is a responsibility of yours. I'm hiring you. You should have a contract ready to give me. And it was a learning experience for them. But a big one in our evolution of working together, because I got to go back and think about what you need to be doing as a business person so that you can evolve. But I'm telling you, these are things you need to know and have up front. So the other thing was, I have a graphics person and I have a website developer. I don't know if in the real world those two people do the same thing or not, but sometimes one of them has had exposure to the other's world or vice versa. And so one thing I think you also need to be really clear about, even in a contract, is when I said, here's what what I am to provide to you as the person developing the website, is a clear delineation of the fonts that are used and the colors that you want. I'm not going to take a PDF and guess. So if you're the website developer, you need to be able to look at a design that someone's done and ideally be able to say, well, this is really great, but this font I've researched and it's not going to translate across 3 different platforms. This color is really great, but people with eyesight issues aren't going to be able to read it. So you're not doing design work, but from a developer standpoint, you need to understand how that design translates, because that was a lot of effort on my part between 2 people to translate that. So really valuable as a developer for you to understand what translates from a design and how you might suggest changes, or say this just doesn't work, or here's how we could solve it, will that work? Because the other thing we had to go through was I can't do what was designed, that just doesn't translate to the web, but I can do this, is that okay? So coming back with solutions, coming back with options for people, I think is really important. And then the other side of the web development, again, I've learned more than I ever wanted to know the last 6 months. The other website development piece is the evolution on the integration with databases and payment. So whether that's registering for an event, paying membership, making a donation to a charity, the other side of website development is understanding PayPal and Stripe and what you can do. And I happen to be using Little Green Light as a fundraising database to a large degree, but it can be used for a number of things. But I'm using it for 3 organizations that I work with, not even my businesses, 3 organizations, nonprofits that I work with. And so there's also understanding, again, what does someone do on that side versus what does the developer do to make Stripe or PayPal work with the form in that program. So which is a whole nother layer that, like, well, who's going to do that? I'm not going to do that, so who's going to do that? And figuring out who's responsible for what and the time that it's going to take. So again, I've kind of gotten exposure to website development a little more than I'd like the last 6 months, but it has been eye-opening as the person paying someone to do this, of what I would have liked to have seen or issues we ran into to be aware of. Another one is I paid a lot of money for our website to be designed about 1.5 years ago, and because you can make a lot of money designing websites, by the way. If you're good, you can make a lot of money. It's not cheap to have a website designed. And this person obviously, and I hired a firm who outsourced the work, so I have no idea who programmed the site. That site was so broken. I couldn't update anything. We had to go through layers to try and get it. I can't even talk the language. It ended up being so broken, I have had to pay to have it completely reprogrammed, exactly the same thing, but completely reprogrammed so it can be updated and changed and add some graphics that we want. This was just not communicating well and completely broken. It was not solvable. So I had to pay again to have it completely rewritten. So I think that's another thing of saying, hey, I've done this before, I understand it, I'm familiar with it, or hey, this is going to cause a problem, I've seen this before. All those things add value to what you're bringing to the table as a programmer. Yeah.
I was curious in your websites, do you a lot of dynamic content, a lot of content changes that you have to update, or you have to rely on somebody else to give them the text to make it updated, or you just have tools so you can update something and it automatically get folded into your web page?
So I'll say I used to have to give it to someone to do, and I refuse to do that anymore, because I want it programmed so that my staff can update stuff like a change of a staff person, make the blog posts and have that parlay into Constant Contact or MailChimp or whatever. I want to be able to change dates for events. I want to be able to do a lot, and I don't consider that programming. Where I go back to the programmer is I need a new blade added for information. I need this whole graphic put into a page, or a whole nother page added and designed.
I was talking about your basic content.
Yeah, I want to be able to do that myself. And I think quite honestly, I think it's cost effective for your clients to do that themselves, because you don't want to be dinged for, a 5-minute interruption to update something your clients can do themselves. Teach them to do it. It's more efficient for you to not make it so they can't do those things. Because I've had 2 people programs, one for a nonprofit and one for my site, where we couldn't do stuff ourselves. 3 sites, actually, I can think of in the past. And it's just not efficient on everyone's part. It's a complete waste of time. Yeah.
So is that kind of why you went to WordPress?
I went to WordPress because it's what I've become familiar with over time. I have seen a couple other programs. Wix is the one name that's coming to mind, and then there's another one. And then the one that my Johson Bixby site got programmed on that was just a disaster. I can't even tell you what that was on. Was that WordPress?
I think it is on WordPress, but I'm trying to, the version before that, I forgot it was some other
Weird.
proprietary thing.
Yeah. So the thing about WordPress, because I have had to deal with so many programmers, I wanted a platform that was readily, I could find someone. Yeah. Because even with my notes database, which runs, my entire practice runs on notes, I can do stuff, and my husband happens to be a programmer, and he's phenomenal. And then, of course, I can bribe Bruce, but my days are numbered.
You haven't seen my contract.
Yeah. My days are numbered in being able to do that myself, and it's going to become more difficult. So WordPress to me is like the common language that I can find someone experienced. Yeah.
Who else? Nobody.
I'm going to say one other tidbit thing is on updating pictures. So again, learned that if you want to swap out a picture, it needs to be the same, ideally, size as the last one to not cause havoc. But even communicating those types of things, so let's say your client can update their own pictures, swap out, add staff, whatever, is communicating to them, you need to make sure it fits within these parameters so it doesn't kind of mess up the website, because that's not your doing, but it's the communication so that they know how to do it correctly and not coming to you and because they broke it. Communication. Yeah.
I heard you have a mailing business?
Yes.
What is that about?
Yeah, what is that about?
Have it go to people's emails and blast mail them, or?
Oh, no, it's like a UPS store. It's a private one.
Oh.
Yeah. It's like a UPS store, though.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it had to do with technology, because I'm really trying to figure out how to do that. You can mass mail
Yeah.
emails without the guard popping up with different platforms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I thought it was interesting because we use, I use Vertical Response, Constant Contact, and MailChimp for various things for various reasons,
Yeah.
and across different companies or nonprofits. And I understand, although when we tested it, I didn't like what it did, is that you can do a lot of that directly through WordPress. With their service, but I don't like how it looks and what clients have to do, so we're not using it.
Okay.
But I think all of us are kind of tired of paying for those services. Finding a different way to do it would be nice.
Okay.
Any other questions for Heidi?
Chris?
Yes.